Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar presentation. This is Michael Saltzman from Blue Sky Bio, and I'm the Director of Digital Products at Blue Sky Bio. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy during these times. We are continuing with our viral dental education webinar series. We have webinars going on most days. Some days we're presenting two, one in the morning and one later on in the day. So please take a look at our website, blueskyplan.com/webinars 2020, as well as the Facebook groups, the Blue Sky Bio user group, and the Viral Dental Education group regarding upcoming webinar presentations. Most presentations are recorded, and you could also access the recordings via our website. If you're watching the presentations live, then we will be sending you a CE credit directly to your email within a week or two. If you're watching the recording, then just complete the 10-question multiple choice test, and we'll be able to send you the CE credit for that presentation. If you have any questions during today's presentation, please enter them in the QA box so they could be addressed towards the end of the presentation. Today's webinar is being presented in conjunction and cooperation with Formlabs. Formlabs is a fantastic company, and we have many users who are exporting from the Blue Sky Plan software to Formlabs printers to generate a variety of different parts. Today with us presenting, we have Sam Wainwright and Mik Mattyasovszky, and they're going to be presenting on the topic of taking control of your practice's productivity with 3D printing. Sam, Mik.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. My name is Mik. I am the dental channel manager here at Formlabs. Today, Sam and I are going to talk about taking control of your practice's productivity and using 3D printing to do it. We're going to highlight a few key areas of why we think that 3D printing can make such a big difference to do that. But we're going to spend most of the time focusing on educating you about workflows, about how to plug in, and once you get a 3D printer, actually make that 3D printer successful as quickly as possible.
Great. Thanks, Mik, and thank you, Blue Sky Bio, for having us. My name is Sam Wainwright. I'm the dental product manager at Formlabs. About 10 plus years of experience in the dental industry, and thanks again for having us.
Great. So, like I said, I'm Mik. I'm going to start out just by talking a little bit about Formlabs as a company, so you can understand who you're dealing with here, and then talk a little bit about what we believe has special relevance in this time. Try and set the stage for why we're focusing on certain workflows and why we're focusing on certain elements of 3D printing. So, to talk a little bit about Formlabs, we were founded in 2012, and we serve a variety of industries. But across all of those industries, our mission is to create access to 3D printing technology, and we do that by making a highly accurate and affordable printer and making the workflows very easy to understand and to take up. We've had some success in the last decade. When I joined Formlabs about 4 years, just under 100. In the time since, we've expanded to 7 locations across the globe. And so what that means is when we develop a printer, when we develop materials, we have the full power of the largest 3D printing company in the world in terms of how many people are actually using it, how many printers are out there. It's actually up to 60,000 now, 60,000 printers globally. And part of that has been making Formlabs into the single largest dental 3D printing company in the world in terms of how many prints we make for dental and how many dental users, both labs and individual practices, are using our printer. So you start out with design on the Form 1, and it has a little bit of it's the first generation, and then we start to develop our applications. We start to understand what exactly makes a 3D printer great. The printer that most of you might be familiar with if you started to investigate 3D printing is the Form 2. That was released in 2016. In late 2019, we released the Form 3B, which is Formlabs' first ever 3D printer specifically targeted for the dental industry. That's the image that you see on your screen right now. And the Form 3B plugs into a dental workflow that Sam will be going over in detail later in the webinar. But there are essentially 3 steps to the digital workflow. There's scanning, there's designing, and there's printing. Now, Blue Sky Bio does a really great job at making that second step easy. It's actually traditionally the most difficult step in the digital workflow. And Blue Sky Bio has done a fantastic job at making that design part accessible. And if you choose not to design, they have their Lab Pronto side, which makes the STL files that you need to actually print in-house very accessible as well. Behind the scenes, we have a specific dental business unit. So we have a 600-person global company, and we have actually about 30 people everywhere from product, that's Sam's department, to services, to sales, completely focused 100% on making sure that Formlabs can harness the engineering power of a global company, but have the laser focus on the dental industry that it takes to actually succeed and make sure that you're getting the results and the content that you need. So you can see here, Formlabs, large company with 150 plus engineers, a giant services team, a really large materials team, and then we have our dental business unit that basically takes all of the other resources and makes sure that we're dedicating them to dental in the way that you guys need. The result of that has been partnerships with many of the leaders in the dental industry. We have distribution relationships with Henry Schein. We have software relationships with all the major players, and educational partnerships to make sure that we get the word out about the digital workflow, and that everything from scanning to design to printing is something that we can help you succeed at. All right, moving on. We're trying to make sure that you have the all these resources there, but there are also a number of factors that go into this. So we have webinars, education that are focused on providing you with the tools, and then we have a team of dental service plan technicians ready and waiting for your call. So this is the leading dental service plan in the industry. They are available to do training. They are available to talk about workflow guides. And while they don't support specific softwares, they're so good and they're so attuned to the dental workflows that they can often point out design issues and other stuff like that. The point of having such a team behind this is that we can start to actually do stuff like make our own surgical guide resin, as you see here. We actually have our own facility in the United States that is making surgical guide resin, soon to be making other biocompatible resins. It's an ISO certified facility in Ohio. So we make our own resin in Ohio. And you'll see that as a common theme throughout this presentation, how we want to make sure that we understand each step of your workflow from beginning to end. That allows us to support you better, that allows you to be more successful, and it makes sure that the product that comes out of a Form 3B is reliable and consistent every single time. So what does the dental industry look like right now? Well, it's actually, we don't have a ton of great data in terms of how many practices have adopted 3D printing, but we can kind of use the dental laboratory industry as a bellwether. And right now, about 1/3, probably a little more, because this survey is just a little bit old, so probably somewhere in the 40 to 45% range of dental labs in America utilize 3D printing. Of those labs, about 1 of every 3 uses Formlabs. The next closest competitor has about 13%. And what this means is, well, it's twofold. First of all, if you have a colleague who might have already started 3D printing or who's interested in 3D printing, then that colleague more than likely has experience with Formlabs and using a Formlabs machine. So there's a certain brain trust there. The second part of it is that because we have such a large customer base and such a great support team and such a great system for getting all these requests together, we're able to collectively gather that data and use it to develop even more great products, use it to have the best service protocols, and in the end, use it to make you as successful as possible. So over the course of really the last 4 years, since we started printing our first surgical guides in April 2016, we've printed out over 200,000 biocompatible appliances and over 10 million dental parts. That's a lot of data that we have to make sure that we are continuing to improve our product and that we know the best workflows to recommend. Okay, so on to the subject of today's webinar. We chose to talk about taking control of your own productivity because this is an especially challenging time. So the image that you see in front of you is actually, it's a series of Form 3Bs that each have 324 nasal test swabs for the coronavirus on them. And we're including this not to say everybody can go out and just print their own test swabs. There's a pretty rigorous process that's used to define whether or not you're able to do this. Most clinics are not ISO certified, so you wouldn't be able to print these and then distribute these. But 3D printing right now is a technology that has the versatility to make a difference in pretty much any business situation that involves physical appliances and so on. So why this topic? Why now? We're talking about this because the ability to 3D print in your office allows you to control a lot more of what happens when, how much it costs, and everything from the patient experience to, most importantly, at the end of the day, the bottom line. So we're going to touch on a few main focuses or foci here. First, we're going to talk about efficiency. Then we're going to talk about control. We're going to talk about localized production and what that means for all of these. And then finally, we're going to talk about predictability, because the more you can predict, the more you can plan, and then the more you can, at the end of the day, you can succeed. Patient experience is obviously part of all those things. So efficiency. Well, efficiency we're kind of defining as how much you get versus how much time you have to put in. So and how easy it all is to do. So when we talk about efficiency for 3D printing, we're talking about reducing the turnaround time. Right now, especially, if you need to schedule a surgery and you need a surgical guide to do it, you have to reach out to your lab. It might be as much as a 2-week turnaround, sometimes a little less. But what that ends up meaning is you can't schedule that procedure for 2 or 3 weeks out. You can't really rely on the entire workflow to come through for you. If you have a 3D printer, then you're able to control the entire digital workflow from end to end. Cost is a huge part of efficiency. So Formlabs has committed to keeping our materials cost reasonable, as well as the equipment. We're the most affordable printer on the market. And then we talk about efficiency. We're talking about not having to interact with the machines that you purchase. For all of the doctors who are interested in becoming tech geeks, there are 10 doctors who just want a machine that they buy to produce for them. The reality is, usually your staff is the one that's going to be managing 3D printing. If all goes well, you'll have very little interaction with our printer. You need to know what it does, but our printer is so easy that you can manage it with your staff, and that the output is the only thing that you see. Sam, you can go ahead to the next slide. All right, control. So control obviously plays into efficiency, but we're defining this a little differently because control is about knowing every element of your workflow. So if you are scanning and then you're going to someone like, you're maybe sending that scan to Lab Pronto and getting back a surgical guide STL file. Once you have that STL file and you've printed them before and you know it, you know exactly when that appliance is going to be ready. So having control and being able to control those treatments from start to finish makes a huge difference in terms of being able to direct your lab in uncertain times. Now, when everybody gets back online, when the offices can open back up and when you have to schedule patients again, you're going to have a rush of treatment. I'm sure you're already dealing with intense backlogs and treatments. I know I had a regular checkup scheduled for the 3rd week of March, and my dentist is reaching out to me and saying that she doesn't know exactly when she's going to be able to schedule me again. It's going to be a crazy, crazy time. The more control that you have in your practice, the more you're going to be able to control the other elements outside of scheduling that that matter. And at this point, we're talking about the ROI. And then there's some features. We have remote printing that do a really great job helping you control this workflow. Dashboard, another feature there. Productivity. So one great thing about the Form 3B is you're able to print around the clock. So typically what this means is, let's take a case where let's talk about aligners. Most successful practices that I talk to are actually doing 3 prints a day. They are printing a 4-hour print in the morning, a 4-hour print in the afternoon, and those are full build platforms. And then they're printing a long but completely stocked build platform of vertical prints at night. And because the 3D printer doesn't sleep, because they can just walk back in the day and have a finished print, that's really, really helpful for them in terms of productivity. I don't need to go through every specific bullet point here, but because you have a 3D printer, because you're able to reduce this turnaround time, you really bring yourself to a point where the 3D printer becomes the tool for you to explore new areas. It actually becomes a marketing tool as well. Your overall productivity is increased because instead of inquiring at your lab, or instead of trying to set up a whole new thing, all you have to do is maybe get a new resin and receive a little bit of education on a workflow, and you're ready to go printing something like dentures or night guards. And then patient experience, I included this because patients at overloaded offices and practices are going to, it's going to be difficult to keep the same patient experience during the mad rush that's going to come in a few months. I just want to highlight one quick story with 3D printing before we turn it over to Sam, which is not necessarily a super high ROI story, but it's something that kind of illustrates the way that 3D printing can come through. So chair time, as we know, is super important, and patients lose or break their retainers all the time. With scanning and printing, what you're able to do is keep the scan data of the patient on file. And that way, if a patient calls you and says, "Hey, doc, I lost my retainer. Can I come back for another one?" You don't have to bring them in the office, take a new impression, pour a new stone model, and do another suck down that way, because you have that file. So you can just take that file, send it to the printer, print out a new model, and do the suck down. If they go to the grocery store or something like that, then on their way back, they can just pick up that retainer for you without ever having to sit in a chair and spend a total of 30 seconds in your office. So it lowers costs, it improves the patient experience in a lot of ways because you're increasing the efficiency, the control, and the productivity. So in times like these, I feel like those are some really, really important factors. And I think 3D printing has a really large role to play in what the dental world is going to look like when the world comes back online from the COVID-19 quarantine. With that, I'm going to pop off. Thank you very much. And please let me introduce you to Sam.
Great. Thanks, Mik. That was great. So this next section, I really, I put it in here, and it's generally just good information for 3D printing, not even that specific to Formlabs, but how to start and some things to consider. The biggest mistake I usually run into with people getting into 3D printing is that they want to be able to do everything all at once. But some things to maybe consider before jumping in on that route is focus on the easiest applications, focus on your primary use case. So what's sort of your 80% reason to buy 3D printing? It might be models, might be aligners, splints, surgical guides, what have you. then continue to outsource the majority of your cases, take it on sort of step by step. Don't switch it all over at once, and then you've got sort of everything sort of happening all at once while you're learning a new technology, which can be very tricky. Slowly transition and take on all that output, and then add new applications as comfort levels go up. So this is my list of difficulty to produce from the lowest number here being the easiest to the highest being the most difficult. And this isn't just considering the difficulty in 3D printing, but also software and some of the other sort of factors involved in these appliances and applications. And I will say Blue Sky Bio does a really good job of making the software component much less of a barrier. But as you can see here, you know, custom impression trays are very easy to design and print, diagnostic models, and you go through this list and you can sort of understand, well, if you want to do implant models, if anybody's ever gotten into that, you know, you need the right scan flags, you need the right model building software, digital implant analogs, right? It becomes very, very complex compared to a simple diagnostic model or a clear aligner model or what have you. So just some expectation settings here. In blue are materials and applications we don't currently have, but we are going to be filling out the portfolio in the near future here. So two examples I'd like to go through here, surgical guides and models. So on surgical guides today, you might be paying to outsource the production of guides for you, or you're not doing them. And on models, you could be paying to outsource them right now. And if you want to start to get into surgical guides, let's just say you're doing dozens a month and you want to start using, making them in-house, start with the simpler cases. So your single unit implants and work your way up into multi-unit, more comprehensive guided surgeries. For models, you know, there's lots of different models in dental. There's diagnostic, models for orthodontic appliances like retainers and aligners, restorative models for fixed restorations, implant models. Start with diagnostic models and orthodontic models. Those are going to be the easiest to learn with, and it's not going to burden your team, you know, scrambling around and trying to figure it out if you flip the switch and all of a sudden you take on all of these applications all at once. And as comfort levels go up and the team sort of learns the workflow and the technology, take on more production, start to do some of the more challenging, you know, products in that list. And lastly here, add new applications. So, you know, splints or even digital dentures, which are great for healing dentures, immediate dentures, or temporaries. Of course, they're approved for long-term use as well. So you can start to think about, like, what else can we use 3D printing for? And really, I tell this to people all the time, but 3D printing is just really beginning in dental. This is going to be the future of this space. And the applications list is just going to get longer and longer. People are going to be able to do more and more. So I have some more information later about applications specifically, but just so everybody's on the same page, I'm going to go through a workflow. So the complete end-to-end workflow to make a surgical guide using 3D printing. These are the 4 main steps. So scanning or acquiring the data, planning or designing, using a software like Blue Sky Bio, manufacture or 3D print the part, and then post-process, assemble, and then deliver. And for this demo, we're going to be talking about surgical guide. And of course, you need to first get a digital impression of the patient's mouth, or it could be physical if you have a desktop laboratory scanner, of course. But you need a surface scan, and then you need a CBTC or a bone density scan to plan guides. I'm sure this group is very, very familiar with all this. Once you have those 2 inputs, the .dicom file and the STL of the patient's anatomy, you're ready to go and design. And here's what these 2 scans could or should look like generally. And those get both imported into a software like Blue Sky Bio's planning software, where you can then position, set up, and create your surgical guide. I won't go into detail in this step because, again, I feel like this group is probably pretty familiar with Blue Sky Bio software offerings and everything else, but you would design the guide here and export that file as an STL, and you're pretty much ready to move into manufacturing. So the first thing you need to do is you need to choose a material, the appropriate material, bring your STL file or your design into our software, print it, and then post-process it. So we have many different dental materials, over 10, but obviously some are only appropriate for some things, and of course you have to pick the right material. So for surgical guides, we're going to be using the very appropriately named surgical guide resin to print these parts. And once you have the resin, you are ready to import your designed guide into our Preform or our nesting software. And not really, most people don't use OBJ, but our software works with OBJ and STL, open file format. And really, Preform is one of the major reasons why we are very successful in dental and otherwise, because the software is very, very intuitive, easy to use, and fast. It has powerful manual controls, so when users get a little bit more skilled with it, you can do some pretty incredible things with it, like changing support locations and many other things. But basically, the design comes into the software, and this is what you're seeing on screen here. You rotate the intaglio, or the surface that mates with the teeth, facing up, away from the white build platform you see on screen. And you can also select the base. If you just want to select the flat surface of where the sleeve inserts, it'll make that part, or that flat surface parallel to the build plate. That also is a technique that works very, very well. It doesn't matter if it's at an angle, especially with multi-units, you're never going to get them all flat anyway, but it's one option, very good for models actually. And then you're going to be generating the supports. So all you have to do is hit the support button, automatically generate supports, and that's pretty much it. It will determine where the supports should go, and you can review and edit them, of course, but if you're just starting out, you're pretty much good from here. You then click the orange printer button on the left, you select your printer, and it tells you what's in the printer for material, what tank it has, how much material is left, and you send the job over and it uploads it. A couple nice things about our Preform software is there's no licensing. You do not need the internet to run the printer. There's no dongles. It's free to install. Anybody can download it and install it today. Mac, PC. It connects to the printer by Wi-Fi, Ethernet, or USB. And we also have remote printing. So you can prepare the printer before you leave, meaning you put in your build plate, your tank, and your resin. You hit prime on the printer, and you can send a job to it and start it printing remotely from anywhere, which is really, really nice. And then one feature that's unique to the Form 3B is we are making updates for the software optional. And this is especially important for anybody that's running a quality system that demarcates the version of software, and you want to have consistency and not be forced updates. And so with all that said, and the job is now sent to the printer, we're ready to print. And just to review visually what it looks like, our resin comes in a cartridge. So it automatically dispenses the resin into the tank. So you put the tank into the cartridge in the back, you put the tank in, and you snap the build plate in. Really those 3 steps. And this is the same steps you do to prime the printer if you're leaving for the night. And you hit go on the printer. The little screen on the front, we don't have a good image of it here, but it even shows you the job with the name of the job. So you can confirm that, yep, this is the case I sent. You can even send a bunch of jobs and have a queue, so you can have these rolling as you go. So you take out the build plate, put in a new one, hit go, let it rip. And it prints while you're doing other things. At that point, your part is ready to be post-processed. And what post-processing means is all that photopolymer printers like ours, so all 3D printers in dental pretty much, have liquid resin on the parts that need to be washed off. And they are typically washed with a solvent like isopropyl alcohol. Once they're washed, they are also cured. Yeah, that's kind of what I said. And we've made it easier, really. These two machines that you see here is our Form Wash and Form Cure. They are about as easy as washing and curing can get. And again, it's washing first, then curing. And you can see here in this image that you pull out the build plate, you pry the part off, and you throw it into this, into the wash. You can see here, that's what it looks like. The raft actually gives you a really nice leverage point, and these things just pop right off. And the Form Wash can wash parts either on the build plate directly or in the deep fryer basket, I like to call it. It hangs in the wash as well. I personally like to take my parts off before washing. I'm not such a huge fan of washing directly in the build plate, although it works very, very well. But the nice thing is you can set a timer on the machine. Say you want to wash for 10 minutes, you set it, you click go, and it washes it and pulls it out and lets it dry for you automatically. What's really nice about that is while it's drying, you don't have to sort of be there to pull it out, because if these parts sit in IPA, isopropyl alcohol, they can degrade over time. So you can do this like before you leave. It just pulls it out. You don't have to worry about it. And curing, it's very similar. You set the time, the temperature. All of our resins have very specific cure and heat times and rates. You put the parts in, hit go, and you can pretty much forget about it, which is very, very nice. So here's the deep fryer basket I was talking about in the wash, which I prefer. I actually do 2 washes at about 5 or 10 minutes, flip them over and do another 5 or 10 minutes. Of course, refer to the instructions for use if it's a biocompatible appliance, like a surgical guide. They have very specific settings and rates, and then UV cure. So this is the bottom or the inside of the UV cure, and this sort of circular part here rotates as it cures. And you can see here the technician has pulled the part out of the UV cure chamber. And this is, if you could tell by the hands, a different technician using our light touch supports to break the part away from the support structure pretty easily. This is new to the Form 3B. The Form 2 had much thicker supports that this was not possible. As you can see here, the supports break off fairly cleanly, very easily, and really just checking to make sure there's no sharp parts, and this guide is pretty much ready for assembly. Again, choose the material, prepare the design, print, post-process. Now that we have the guide washed, cured, and supports removed, you can polish and finish these parts as well if you want it to be a beautiful finished shiny part. You friction fit the surgical guide sleeve into the guide, and the surgical guide resin is also autoclavable. So before surgery, you can autoclave it right before the procedure, and it's completely sterilized, and the resin is built to meet those the heats and demands of autoclave. Our resin's color changes slightly based on the step, and as you can see, it actually becomes its near clear with yellow after it's autoclaved. So it is orange after curing. Once it's autoclaved, it's yellow, which is a nice visual indication to make sure, oh, has this been autoclaved or not, for the dentist or the assistant or whoever. And here's the beauty shot. This is nice and polished and glazed for an anterior, very angled implant. And then this is just a shot of a dentist showing a guide on a model, and then insertion, and the procedure then can go on. So just to recap on the workflow: scan, design, print, post-process, assemble, and deliver. Those are the main steps. And with that, I would like to go over the dental materials and applications that Formlabs has to offer. We have a full suite of resins that are very sort of specific in use, but also can do a lot of different things, and it's a portfolio that's ever expanding. And we actually have one new material we're going to talk about at the end as well. So we have 4 model materials. Gray is what we recommend for orthodontic models, thermoforming models, and things like that. We actually have a custom setting just for orthodontics to be fast and accurate. Draft is really a resin that is for fast, rapid production of thermoform appliances. So for somebody who's waiting for an appliance. Model is ideal for restorative or high accuracy models. So, fixed restoration models, implant models, stuff like that. And white is really best for diagnostic or aesthetic presentation models. Here is gray with the build plate with some models vertically. Probably could even fit a couple more on there. Whoever laid that out wasn't taking their time. And you can see here, obviously, it's the Druformat here, but with thermoform on top of that. And this is actually our gray 160. That's the layer height that I had mentioned that is made just specifically for orthodontic work, but it is extremely accurate. So this is an accuracy range within 100 microns, and 93% of the surface is within that spec. And you can see here, even at 160 micron layer, this appliance in this patient's mouth was thermoformed on it, and you can see little to no layer lines in the final appliance in the patient mouth. You can do a 9 model build plate like this, flat to the build plate, in about 3.5 hours. And a model will cost you about $2 or $3 a part. So if you could imagine, if Blue Sky aligner software is about $10 for a design on a treatment per arch, and it's say 10 steps, you can do an aesthetic aligner case, pretty low tooth movement in less than $50 in cost, which is pretty enticing. And then draft, I mentioned before, this is really specifically for rush cases. It requires less UV curing. It's very accurate as well. The accuracy range is a bit changed here. So this is within 200 microns. We're still within 95% of that spec. And the really impressive part is, even though it's a rapid material that prints at 300 microns, you can see some more layer lines compared to gray, but it is really a pretty aesthetic outcome, especially for somebody who just needs it rapidly. And you can do 1 model in about 20 minutes or less, or 9 models about an hour and a half, which is pretty fast for our technology and the accuracy that we're able to achieve. Model is, like I had mentioned, for restorative models, check models for contact occlusions and fixed restorations. Implant models is extremely accurate and been dialed to do those specific applications. And you can see this is a fun model that I did a cut plane in some CAD software to show the fitment of the dies to the sockets. And I won't hang on this too long, but you can see within 50 microns our dies, and this is a really impressive range, are 95% within spec. And even these anterior abutments, which are fixed to each other, even fixed across this 3-unit bridge, we're 95% within 50 microns, which is pretty good. And our operative model here, from molar to molar, we're still 94% within 100 microns, which would be absolutely great for any sort of cross arch case or bigger comprehensive cases. Here's some just examples. Again, $2 to $4 for a quad kit, that's upper, lower, and die. Fulls, which are full arch, upper, lower, and die, maybe $6 to $8, depending on if you have a palatal or articulator on the back. So pretty cost effective there as well. Actually, these resins are the same price, draft, gray, and model. It's the only difference is the amount of material these models will take will vary quite a bit, and that's why you'll see these kits be a little bit more, because the articulator has some resin usage and so forth and so on. Here's white. White's, again, just a nice aesthetic presentation piece for patients or planning cases. And then our biocompatible resins, we have Surgical Guide, LT Clear, which is a long-term use occlusal splint material, denture teeth, and denture base. Surgical Guide, we went over already, but it is for palate guides, drill guides for placing implants. Here's a all-on-4 guide here over an edentulous arch, and you can see the cross-arch accuracy in green is quite good, 94% within 100 microns. And the print surface quality, the clarity is very, very impressive off the printer. And you can do a quad guide for about $2 to $4 a part, a full arch guide, for maybe $6 to $8. Yes, I have $3 to $6 here, but even $6 a guide. If Blue Sky, their CAD software for guides is $20 a case, that means you can have, and then their sleeve, which I think is maybe $5 at most, or maybe even 10. You're at $50 for a complete end-to-end full arch guide, which is super, super cost effective. And even can allow you to offer these in treatments where you didn't think otherwise would make financial sense for you or the patient. Splints, you can see here the print clarity and quality that comes off of the Form 3 is quite impressive. It almost looks polished already. This is a long-term use occlusal splint, preventing wear and tear on teeth. Great for after a full arch treatment or placing implants and the patient wants to have their teeth be protected. Some accuracy statements here. So 96% within 100 microns. Very, very good. And one splint like this with wraps and everything is $4 to $6 in material usage. And 8 splints print in about 2.5 hours. Dentures, Blue Sky also has this software, but we have denture resin, 6 teeth color and 4 base or gingiva shades. And this can be a very, very good looking long-term use denture. And the really amazing thing about this denture material is the all-in cost with teeth and base with supports and everything is under $10. So again, Blue Sky has their CAD for $20 for a denture. To be able to have an economy denture for $30 to a patient. And if you think, duplicating dentures traditionally is very difficult, very labor intensive. It's very easy to make a second completely perfect duplicate denture. Patients can leave with 2 sets. You can have subscription dentistry. I mean, this is really going to be changing the way we treat, patients, in the future. And I think today even, a little bit of a counterintuitive thinking around this stuff because it's just so different than analog workflows. One of the more exciting and newer materials I just want to mention lastly here in this application section is we announced recently our partnership with Bego, and we are going to be bringing on their temporary and even permanent crown material. It isn't released yet, but it is coming in the future. And this is actually part of our materials partner platform where, companies like Bego and especially other providers that have a material that we might not have or we might not be developing in-house, we will reach out to and work with companies like Bego to bring these products to our customers and to market. And you can see a little Form 2 back here. I put that in there because this will be fully supported on our previous generation printer as well as our new Form 3B. But the Bego permanent crown, which is the first 3D printed permanent crown to be on the market, high dimensional accuracy, very, very low porousness. So it's very good at, not taking on plaque or anything like that. Very antagonist friendly. So it's very, has very much a lot of give in its interaction with the opposing arch. So implants can be very, very good with this material because as you all know, implants are fixed to bone. Any sort of cushion, any sort of a cushioning effect that these materials can give are always a good thing and can make implants a bit healthier over the long term. And you can see here, there are going to be 7 shades in the end, and it's less than $5 a unit, minimal wear, discoloration. It's a pretty incredible material. And we also are going to be releasing their temporary material first before the permanent, but 4 shades under $4 a unit per in cost. Works with traditional temporary cements, and it satisfies all the biocompatible standards. Actually, both of these materials are registered and approved in the EU, and the US FDA approvals are in process. So really exciting stuff to come, and really, I think the first step towards 3D printed crowns becoming mainstream. And as you all know from the adoption rates of the zirconia, it's going to be slow, but I think this is a fantastic start, and it's a great, highly filled, strong material. So Mik here is going to round us up. Are you still there, Mik?
Yes, I am.
Great. Let me kick it over to you. Let me mute my.
Perfect. Okay, so as Sam mentioned, the Form 3B is obviously the most important part, the flagship of this, but we want to make sure that the end-to-end workflow is supported. So that's why we're one of the only companies that has both a post-curing oven and the wash that Sam was talking about, as well as all the materials you need to go within in DSP. As I mentioned before, we're really committed to making this accessible, and a big part of accessibility is affordability. So for everything together, the Form 3B complete package, it's a price around $6,000, actually under $6,000 in a lot of cases, depending on the deal you work out with your partner reps. We sell through Benko Dental, Henry Schein Dental, NOAC Dental Supplies, as well as a number of small regional resellers. So definitely please reach out to myself or Zach Precious. If you can look in the Q&A for our contact information, and make sure that that you ask us any questions that you need after this presentation. Also, our website has a number of really amazing resources, workflow guides. I was just answering the live Q&A. It looks like some more questions popped up, so we'll try and answer some of those live as well. But not only do we have information about our products, of course, but for each of those products, we have detailed workflow guides, instructions for use, and case studies that can help understand everything from what is the optimal temperature that I need to post-cure this surgical guide at, to how do I generate ROI for my practice by using 3D printing. Please, if you're interested in a particular workflow or a few particular workflows, don't hesitate to request a sample part. We make these in Ohio, and we can ship them to you. Our print farm is actually really engaged right now printing the swabs, so there will be a longer delay than usual for receiving the sample parts. But you can reach out to us on the side if you feel like you really need one, and we can try and get you one.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Let's do some Q&A.
Perfect. So first, I'm gonna start off with one that I answered, but I said in there that we would talk a little bit about it live, which is how would the Form 3B compare to the Sprint Ray or other 3D printers? There are a number of differences. I would say that my answer here is pretty good explanation in terms of how Formlabs is focusing on the workflow, the ease of use, and very importantly, the accuracy. So for especially some of the newer indications, accuracy is super, super important. Accuracy translates to fit. It translates to the correct depth on an implant, for example. But technically speaking, the difference is we use a laser while just about every other 3D printer out there is using a projector of some sort to print. And that means that the Form 3B does a really good job of actually creating organic shapes with its laser, whereas we're not relying on pixels to create a picture and just kind of flash freeze it.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, the printers are really similar. They're more similar than dissimilar, but the technology that actually cures the resin is different. And you can see it in the part clarity and quality and accuracy versus ours. You'll get just smoother, more cleaner looking parts. They definitely will have a speed advantage, but sometimes the affordability and having multiple printers is more important than just raw speed, because remember, if theirs is faster but has smaller build plates, that means it's more work on your side. So it's more back and forth sort of workflow stuff. So that's important to remember. Mick, what any of these other ones you want to do first?
Yeah, sure. There's a question about why you can't use surgical guide on a normal Form 3. So as 3D printing becomes more and more prominent in dental, we thought that it was very, very important that we had a printer dedicated to biocompatible workflows, and that's the Form 3B. So everything from the firmware to the software to the workflows that we support are dedicated towards making sure that we produce safe and accurate parts.
Yeah, I think what's really important here to mention too is before the launch of the Form 3B, which was like November 12th, I believe, anybody that bought a Form 3 fundamentally has a Form 3B. You're not going to be missing out the ability to print surgical guide or any of our future dental software improvements or anything like that. We want to make sure everybody was, taken care of and not sort of making a mistake buying it early. So everybody that bought before the launch of the new printer has all the capabilities. I think that's a really important point, and I don't think it's been that clearly communicated. So everybody is going to be able to do everything. It's just if you know the Form 3B exists and today and you bought a Form 3, that Form 3 would not be able to do biocompatible materials. And we also have a lot of new dental software improvements coming out in the future. So workflow optimizations, even some CAD features that would be unique to the Form 3B as well. And we've got a lot more coming. So.
Great. We have two questions about the print time for a temporary crown. I'm sure we don't have an official answer for that. I don't know if you want to speculate, Sam, or just wait until we come out and study it.
It's a little bit difficult to completely say, but our benchmark right now is 1 crown in about 40 minutes.
Okay. What is the material that the permanent crowns will be made of?
It is it's a photopolymer, a highly filled photopolymer. So it has ceramic infill. That's what it gets its strength out of. And it's pretty much very similar to composite, like what you'd use in chairside, but it's been, much more exposed to light compared to something that you would do chairside, right? Because it has a very intensive UV curing parameters and so forth and so on. So it's like a really high performance composite in a lot of ways, sort of make it simple. But it is it's a thermoset. It's a photopolymer, like a hybrid.
Is there any potential for bonding these Bago products with traditional dental resins?
Yep, they've all been tested, and they're totally fine to be bonded or cemented with traditional permanent resin or permanent adhesives as well as temporary cements. So the ability to be bonded is pretty great.
Great.
A lecture about 3D printing dentures.
Yeah, I don't know, Sam, do you like talking about dentures?
I do. I have a lot of content already recorded that you can watch whenever. I have one on aesthetic dentures, one on just, I did a co-hosted webinar with a doctor who's doing it every day. Be happy to send you that content so you can watch it on demand whenever you want. If you email us at dental@formlabs.com, I will make sure you get it.
Excellent.
And new Bago material is compatible with the Form 2, and we will be, for the very hopefully distant future, keep supporting the Form 2 and bringing materials out on it. We have no intention on stopping that anytime soon.
All right. If a surgical guide is not fitting printed models, how would you troubleshoot?
I would make sure, I mean, a troubleshooting fitment is always a little tricky, but surgical guide and the Form, it depends if it's the Form 3 or Form 2, but orientation of part is critical. Offset, so the distance between the intaglio of the part and the teeth, make sure that's right. If it's rocking, like it's kind of warped, I would definitely make sure to check how your supports are being generated and change the distance from support tip to raft and lower that. I would, if you want to email dental@formlabs.com, I'd be happy to type these all out and even give you screenshots and highlight what I would do. Just some best practices and aligning them, especially in full arch stuff. Like if you're doing a multi-site and a cross arch and you need the fitment to be, from molar to molar, just like anything in dental. And that's why I sort of always recommend in the beginning to start with quadrant single units and work your way up, because you sort of learn as you go what makes a difference in fitment and keeping its shape and form during the process.
Great. So I'll take a few of these. A question from Justo: can Form 3 print in open mode? And from Michael Sisk: is yours an open resin system? It's not an open resin system, but we do have a Formlabs dental platform where third parties can work with us to develop a workflow, an approved workflow on the Form 3B. Generally speaking, though, a major advantage of using the Form 3B is the fact that we have an automated cartridge system and we have fine-tuned settings for each one of our resins. So that means that first of all, we can expect very consistent and reliable results. So we have a much lower failure rate because the printer is tuned to specific resins. But it also means that if there ever is an issue, we can locate exactly where that is in the workflow. You might run into, if we had an open system, and for printers with open systems, sometimes it can be very difficult to figure out why a given print didn't come out the way you expected it to. If you call a support rep from a printer company and say, I used a third-party resin, they're going to probably say, well, that's probably the issue. And the resin company will probably say, well, it's probably the printer. So we want to make sure that we can help out with every step of the workflow.
Yeah, pointing around. And I'll just add one more thing. Biocompatible appliances and products have very specific requirements in print settings, post-processing, and everything else. So just be careful with these open printers that you are using the resins and they've been approved for that printer and you're using the right wash and cure parameters. Otherwise, they might not meet biocompatible standards. And the nice thing about our system is we have all that figured out and tested and tuned. And, this makes me want to talk about our validation workflow and how we test everything. And it's pretty intensive, but I'll leave it at that.
All right, from Sheena Sood: what is the difference between the Form 2 and the Form 3?
Pull up the slides.
So the main difference is in the actual optical engine. So although the printers externally look fairly similar, the primary difference is that all of the sensitive optical components are taken from a broad chassis and actually put into one box called the light processing unit. Now, in terms of the results, you can expect, first of all, a more reliable printer, a more accurate printer, but also smoother surface finish, as well as a more consistent result. So it actually uses a process that we call low force stereolithography, which basically means that the Form 3B is under a lot less stress while printing than the Form 2 was. And that means, once again, consistency, reliability, beautiful, accurate parts with great fit.
Yeah, and one of the main things, and what's a lot different about even comparing it to DLP printers, is there's no main glass under the printer. So most printers, if you pull up the resin tank, you'll see glass under it. That's what the light is projected through. That glass is just waiting for dust and debris to get on it, and you have to clean it and everything else. Ours is completely open on the bottom. The light engine, the LPU, has a very small sliver of glass, which is very easy to clean. It's pretty well self-contained, and it's also user replaceable. So if something happens and that needs to be swapped out for some reason, we don't have to completely take back your printer, RMA it, or anything like that. We just send you just the little light engine, and it's like the size of a cassette tape, a VHS cassette tape, for those of you who remember that in the 90s.
Yep, and I'm going to send a link to an article that we did comparing the tech specs of the two printers as well in the chat, so you'll be able to see that. And then Sheena Sood's second question, what is the material of the bagel permanent teeth and is it approved in Canada? When will this be released? I think, Sam, you talked about the material that actually makes up the resin. We expect we're shooting for a release date around the end of this year, so fourth quarter of this year is when we are tracking to release our permanent resin. Anything you want to add?
That's permanent specifically, yeah, temporary will be sooner.
Mhm.
Although I will say right now, the regulatory world and everything else that's going on, don't hold us to these dates. I've been hearing some things in EU regulatory bodies are now delaying applications. Not that that's necessarily that relevant to what we're saying, but like we will push and do everything we can to get these resins out ASAP. And Canada specifically, it typically is like the US and EU are the biggest two markets, and Canada's right after. So sorry, Canada, it's going to be a little bit after, but we'll get there. And usually all the things that we have to pass for regulatory in the FDA and EU are exactly what the Canadian Health Canada needs. So it's really not that much of a lift to get it there. And I think they're already getting things together on that side. But again, don't quote me on that.
Sam, I think with your hands in front of your face, it's more difficult to hear you.
Oh, sorry. Without my hands.
I have heard with this temporary material that the Canadian approval might actually be faster than normal. So anyway, I'd say continue to reach out to us for updated timelines. Like Sam said, with the coronavirus, every timeline everywhere seems like it's being thrown into question. So we're going to stay on top of it as possible. We have our own, this is part of, the dental business unit and all that. We have a regulatory officer whose sole job it is to make sure that we, check all the boxes and that everything that we sell you is safe, but also that we provide accurate and completely specific timeline info going forward.
Yeah, and he used to work at the FDA. He's extremely sharp.
His name is also Sam.
Yeah, he's great.
How does your build plate compare? Generally speaking, we have one of the larger build volumes in the market. It's 5.9 by 5.9 inches.
It's 5.7.
5.7. Sorry, it's 5.7 by 3.
Uh-huh. Or 155 millimeters.
Yeah. So just ortho arches stacked vertically. That's not something that I think you would want to expect day in, day out. Printing can fit between 6 and 9. Printing vertically, you can generally fit 12 to 14.
Yeah, and I'll just say with DLP and build plate size, it's really critical when they say they have a large build plate, what kind of light engine they're using. So if it's a 1080p DLP projector, there's only a certain amount of pixels, it can produce, just like your screen at 1080, right? So you can make the build plate size whatever you want. It just makes the pixel smaller or larger. So if it's still a 1080p projector and it's a big platform, that means your pixel size is going to be pretty big. And that equates to rougher edges, less accuracy, and so forth and so on. I think the DLP projectors that are going to make the most sense in the future are the 4K ones, where you'll see all of a sudden big build plate sizes and have the small enough pixels. But there are very few in the market so far, and 4K projectors are extremely expensive still. But I'll leave it at that.
Okay, from Sydney Reyes, are some of the parts from Form 2 interchangeable with Form 3B, i.e. the resin tanks? The resin cartridges and the build platform are the exact same, so you can use them across both. The resin tanks are different, and that's partially because the resin tank design change is one of the key elements of making the Form 3B so much improved over the Form 2.
Yeah, and this is probably a good segue into talking about resin tanks and affordability of them. Our Form 3 resin tank is $150, and it'll last minimum 4 to 5 liters of resin. And you could do hundreds and hundreds of guides easily with that amount of resin. And so the per part resin tank cost is very, very minimal, cents per part. So very affordable on the consumables. And that's one other point I'd like to make. That is one really nice thing about coming from a general use 3D printing company, is our accessories and components don't get that dental premium, if you know what I mean. Like our build plates are 99 bucks. Our tanks are 150 bucks. You know, if it was a dental specific company building this from the ground up, you would see much higher per sort of consumable or accessory cost. So, yep.
All right. What is the day-to-day and month-to-month maintenance for the 3B? Sam, as the owner and operator of the Formlabs Dental Lab, I think you are very qualified to answer this.
I have 11 Form 3Bs, and I've been running them a lot since July. And I think I've had to wipe the top glass of the LPU on 2 of them once, and it was just a PEC pad, which is like a dust-free microfiber with a little absolutely pure 99% IPA, a couple wipes, and that was it. And all that time and all that printing. And I just moved 3 printers home so I could work from home efficiently. And it has some moving brackets. I snapped them into place, moved the printers, removed them, plugged them in, and they work absolutely perfectly, even after having them in the back of my car. So we've never really done any major maintenance on them. And I will say I've even made a mistake and tilted the resin tank a little bit too much and spilt a little bit, and I got on the printer. And since the glass isn't there, you just wipe the edges. It doesn't get on anything. And I just wiped it up with a paper towel with IPA and didn't affect anything. It's really pretty straightforward and much improved over the Form 2, I might add.
Okay, from Sydney Reyes, many competitors are really pushing the speed of DLP. Other than accuracy for Formlabs, does Form have an answer to speed? I'll start briefly and then I'll let Sam dive in. Our answer for speed is draft resin. So there are some indications where speed is really important because you want to be able to do it chairside. The best example here is just a suck down retainer. So a patient doesn't have to wait and then come back to get their retainer. Because of that, we have a resin specifically that works really well for printing retainer models. It's draft resin. It prints one in about 19 minutes. And that's how we kind of do that. But we also want to be able to have the accuracy component.
Yeah, I think if you were to sort of list out what makes a 3D printer great, you know, so like speed, accuracy, consistency, quality of part, surface finish, workflow, software, post-processing, and everything, I think we've got every one of those checked except speed. I mean, just to be honest, we do have some speed improvements coming in the future, and it will get faster, but it will never be as fast as DLP, and we're quite aware of that. And it's fine. I mean, if somebody needs to print something absolutely rapidly, then it might not be the best choice. But remember, the faster the printer is, the more you have to be there to interact with it, right? So if you need to get maximum output by running that printer 4 times in a day, that is a lot. Coming from somebody who runs 10 printers a lot, that is a lot of time. I mean, it takes pulling these out, putting them in, washing, curing. So do you want to do more parts in more time or fewer parts in less time? You know, I don't know. It's definitely should be consideration for anybody, and I'm just being honest.
All right. Release for custom tray material.
Yes. We're hoping this COVID thing's kind of messed everything up, but we're hoping in June.
All right. If you print with Bega resin, can be used in closed mode. Yes, we will have a setting. It will be essentially like using any one of our other resins.
Yep, it'll be in our cartridge. And
yep.
Validated with instructions.
All right. Print models horizontal or vertical, and any accuracy variation theoretically.
Oh, for sure. And that's true for all 3D printing. It just has to do with the force of the print and how that affects the part. It's just like when you're say you're building a tree house or building a house on the ground, right? And this is not unique to Formlabs. Vertical models are just going to be less accurate. Again, I don't care what 3D printer it is. And if somebody says otherwise, I'd like to see the data behind it. Printing models flat to the build plate is just more accurate, period. Again, it's like building a house in the ground on bedrock versus in the trees. Now,
I've been in some cool tree houses. I felt pretty safe.
I mean, trees are kind of cool, but I will say, vertical for orthodontic models, you know, the tolerances and the accuracy, you're still well within range to have great fitting retainers and aligners. It's just when you get into, say, if you're doing like implant models or restorative models, where you know you need tolerances, you know, within 50 microns or better. You know, 20 microns makes a big difference in those cases. Then you absolutely you do not want to print those models vertically. And again, anybody with any other printer, that is always true. There's some fundamentals to 3D printing that are completely the same, and that's one of them.
All right, I see a new question from Ariel Forbes, and Ariel was next up on the list, so we'll just bump those together. Can the 3L be used with dental applications? The answer is we're going to do testing for really high accuracy applications, and we need to have the biocompatible workflows approved. So that will be forthcoming as far as the 3L goes. But as far as printing those things that you might need to print in large quantity, namely we're thinking of models to make aligner sequences off of, we expect that we will have more than enough accuracy and printing power to be able to do those efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, to be determined.
Do you have a video, YouTube or otherwise, for training of staff for daily care and maintenance? Is it embedded in your other videos? Yeah, we have a lot of content along those. I would just honestly go to formlabs.dental.com and, or sorry, dental.formlabs.com and start poking around. There's a bunch of great stuff. If you just Google Formlabs dental learning pathways, there's going to be a bunch of really great tutorials for exactly that.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to see my bootleg one-off tutorial videos, it's Formlabs Dental on YouTube. That is where you get the real cutting-edge rough stuff. But I usually, if I hear enough questions about how to do something, I will make a quick video and post it on there. And the same goes for anybody, you know, attending this. If, hey, I got a ton of questions around doing something, I'll make it. You know, it takes me 10 minutes to make a video. I don't mind, and I'll post it. And hopefully it's helpful.
Okay, can the 3B print wax ups?
Sure. You depends what you mean, like a tooth colored over prepared or unprepared teeth wax up, or like actual wax up for veneer pressing. But the answer is yes. You can do, we have castable wax where you can press veneers. You can do, I do, actually your denture teeth is actually a pretty good looking material, and I will do it over unprepared or prepared teeth. And you can use resin or even super glue to glue them on. And it makes a really nice presentation piece because you can do the model and the model material, which is sort of a neutral, and then the teeth in say B1 or A1, it looks really, really pretty, and it sells cases for sure.
Awesome.
So lots of ideas or workflows there that are possible for sure.
What is the benefit of using a devoted custom tray resin over any other stable, stiff resin?
Biocompatibility indication, so it's approved and indicated for that use. And also our custom tray resin is going to be optimized for speed and affordability, because that's two main components of custom trays. So the settings are going to be 200 microns. It's going to be very fast, very productive, and probably our lowest cost biocompatible material, because this is not a high dollar you know, product in the end, right?
Great. And then final question, this comes from Abiodun Ojula. New to this, but I get the 3D printer concept. Is there a way to learn and master the system? Yes, there is. We have a ton of resources. We have our dental services team. They're with you every step of the way. We have a vast library of guides and so on. And we have a full strength dental business unit to hold your hand as you go from 3D printing novice to 3D printing expert in a matter of days.
Yeah. The last point I'll make on that, and then we'll wrap this thing up. It's amazing how 3D printing is such a process, and you can print something, you can learn what you did right or wrong from it and apply it to your next round and see it instantly. I mean, it's really, it's an amazing process, and it's unlike anything, you know, that probably most have experienced, because it's really instantaneous. You get it and you're like, oh, I made a mistake there, or that looks great. So you learn as you go. I mean, we're there for you, but a lot of this stuff is, you got to see it to believe it.
And from the dental software design side, there's a ton of educational material on blueskyplan.com. There's a lot of free videos and resources there. And the Blue Sky Bio user group also has a lot of clinicians that are posting cases, responding to cases, teaching the dental sides of things. And of course, we have this webinar series, the upcoming presentations, and the past recorded presentations. So you have support both from the dental planning side and from the printing side.
Yeah, and CAD output is such an important part. But if you have bad CAD, it's going to be a bad print. But, you know, so CAD is like so critical to making good prints. So thank you for that.
Great. So Sam and Mik, thank you so much for the time and the education and your presentation today. And thanks to Formlabs for the fantastic and excellent work they're doing for the dental industry. So thank you very much. And I'd like to thank everybody who attended the presentation. To repeat a few points from the beginning of the presentation, and if you watched this presentation live, you'll be getting the CE credit sent directly to your email account within a week or two. If you're watching the recording, please complete the 10-question multiple choice test, and we'll be able to send that to you. The upcoming webinar schedules on our website, blueskyplan.com/webinars 2020, and we hope to see you at upcoming presentations. So thank you for attending. Sam and Mik, thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
And everybody stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home, and hopefully we'll be back to our normal schedules very quickly.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.